Now to the US, where the Georgia prosecutor handling the case against Donald Trump has proposed starting his trial on the 23rd of October. The former president and 18 co-defendants are charged with conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election.
For Donald Trump, it was just another one of his perfect presidential moments.
What's going on in this country is, and by the way, wants to indict me for a perfect phone call. This was even better than my perfect call with Ukraine. Remember that call? That was a perfect call. This one's better. This one is more perfect. I challenged the election in Georgia, which I have every right to do.
But for Georgia prosecutors and the men and women of a grand jury, it was the start of a criminal conspiracy. They've slapped the former U.S. president and 18 others with 41 charges over their attempt to overturn Joe Biden's win in the 2020 presidential election. While the results were still being certified, Trump was recorded putting pressure on Georgia officials to find him new votes.
Look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
Many of his co-defendants are accused of illegitimately claiming to be official electors and signing fake election certificates in favor of Donald Trump. They're all being charged under the state's RICO laws, the same laws used to prosecute organized crime.
Let's explore this with Fred Smith, who is Professor of Law at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to DW, Professor. So now we have a proposed trial date in the Georgia case, 23rd of October. That does seem awfully quick, especially with such a sprawling case with so many defendants. What's likely to be the thinking?
It does seem quite quick. Initially, the proposed date was in March of 2024. The former president has proposed a date in sometime in 2026. What seems to have changed is that one of the defendants, Ken Chesborough, sought what's called a speedy trial request. So every defendant in the United States under the Constitution has a right to a speedy trial. And given that these defendants are being tried together, the fact that one of them sought a speedy trial seems to have prompted the district attorney to seek this earlier date in October.
And might that indicate a split between the defendants?
It does, in the sense that you have the former president who's seeking a date years from now, right, and another who seems to want this over as quickly as possible. And so there doesn't seem to be agreement among these co-defendants about how quickly they want this process to go.
Right. And the Fulton County case, though it's about alleged attempts to subvert an election, Mr. Trump and his 18 co-defendants have been charged under these so-called RICO laws, which deal with organised crime. So why has the prosecution gone down that path?
Yeah, so in the state of Georgia, one can make out a racketeering case if you have a group of individuals who have a common purpose, a common scheme, especially if one can demonstrate that that common purpose is a corrupt purpose. And what one looks to is whether or not these individuals engaged in a pattern of illegal activity on the road to carrying out that particular purpose. Here, the prosecution has alleged a wide range of illegal activities, false statements to government officials like the former Secretary of State or the current Secretary of State, false statements to a House Senate subcommittee, false statements to a House Judiciary Committee as well. They've alleged that in violation of Georgia law, the former president solicited the Secretary of State of Georgia to violate his oath. And in Georgia, that is a crime, to solicit a public official to violate his oath. In Georgia, it's a crime to pretend to be a government official that one is not. In this particular case, you have a group of fake electors who purported to be the electors for the state of Georgia, and prosecutors allege that they knew that that was not correct. In Georgia, forgery is a crime. Right? So these false statements, this solicitation, the prosecution points to this and say this constitutes a pattern with the purpose of subverting the
Right.
2020 election.
So we have a potentially televised criminal trial of a former president who's running for election again. How does Fulton County stop this from turning into a circus?
Yeah, so in Georgia, as a matter of routine, the vast majority of criminal trials can be televised. Cameras are allowed in the courtroom. The judge in this particular case has already approved a motion to allow cameras in the courtroom during his arraignment in September, for example. And so that makes this case different than any of the other charges that he's facing, where cameras will not be present. In terms of how to avoid a circus, I'm sure that the district attorney would love to know the answer to that as well, right? We're all seeing the images from the Fulton County Jail from the past few days. And she's going to, I assume, try to keep as much decorum and as much normalcy as possible during a process that, given its stakes, is anything but normal.
So Mr. Trump has a busy old year ahead, 91 cases in 4 indictments while potentially fighting a presidential election. Are court officials in these 4 indictments likely to coordinate timetables? Because he can't be in 4 places at once, can he?
Sure. So even if they're not formally coordinating, they certainly going to be closely watching what the other is doing, right? Someone can't stand trial literally at the same time, right? So at the federal level, the federal prosecution has sought a date in February for at least one of Trump's set of federal charges. Here, right, we've learned that the district attorney is setting an October date, which frankly seems early. Given the sheer scale of the charges here. But they certainly will be looking to each other just as a matter of logistics and closely following the dockets.
And a word about the prosecutor in the Georgia case, Fanny Willis. In the UK, where I'm from, and here in Germany, prosecutors tend to be anonymous figures. Not so much there in the US, where they seem to be forever giving press conferences.
Yeah, so here, this particular district attorney was elected just a few years ago. She beat a long-term incumbent. That said, she is a long-time prosecutor. 10 years ago, she brought racketeering charges against teachers in Atlanta, administrators who conspired together to change students' test scores to make the school district look better than at that point it in fact was. She currently is bringing racketeering charges against a rapper and the group known as YSL. And so she's a very experienced prosecutor, especially when it comes to this type of charge.
Good talking to you. Thank you for taking us through that so clearly. Professor Fred Smith from Emory University in Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you.